Okay, hello. Okay, so the stream is open. It usually takes about 30 seconds to a minute for people to start filing in.
Sure.
But that should happen. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
It's been a while, seeing the numbers start to grow here. So, just to kind of fill people in, hi, Katie. Hi, Daniel. Who else? Right now, those are the two names that I'm seeing in chat anyways. So yesterday when I did AI Inside with Jeff Jarvis, Jeff decided, I'm going to switch on the stream to my audience on Twitter thing, and which you can do in StreamYard for guests. Hello, Clinton. Good to have you here. And our live numbers, normally we would see like 20, 30, maybe 40 on a big day. They went up to something like 650. It was like 640 or 650. Wow. So it was gigantic jump. So it was like, oh, this is a feature that we probably should try and use then. So anyway, so Myriam is looking into it on her end, but do not feel like you need to spend a bunch of time
it's
on
doing something.
Is it?
Yeah, it says Twitter account connected. Stream this to your Twitter account. Title.
All right. What I'm wondering is when you switch go,
so
is
wait,
it going to then
title?
Cut it?
What does it want? Just like, what do you want me to put it down in title? Because it's your brand, so.
Oh, Techsploder interview with Myriam Joire, I guess. I'm surprised it doesn't take my title, but I guess it's your feed, so
yeah,
you have to have control of it.
TCH. Is there a capital S? No, it's just one word, right?
Just one word.
SPLODER, right? I just want to spell it right.
ODER, yeah.
Techsploder, what do you want to say?
Chat with, Myriam
with
Joire.
yours truly.
Or with yours truly. Now, it might allow you to do all this, and then when you hit stream, then put up the, you can't do that because you're not premium. So I'm super curious to know what it does for you there.
So let's see what's happening. Oh, premium account is required.
So
lame. Upgrade your premium account. So it does still have a go live button, but I don't think it's going to do anything.
I don't think it's going to do anything.
It's not working. I did all this for nothing. That's all.
Oh, dang. Okay. Well, thanks for trying.
Well, hang on. There are more destinations. There's my Instagram. Let's do Instagram Live.
Okay.
Screw this. Can we swear on your podcast?
I mean, I'll bleep it out if you do, but.
Okay, good. I beeped you out, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did I say?
You used the S word a couple of times.
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
It's fine. I noted as we go, so.
Yeah, apologies.
The one thing that I love about using my setup is that I've hit a space bar anytime while I'm on a podcast. If I'm recording my own show, I have it set up so that it immediately marks the recording in that location.
Yes.
So then I don't put anything.
That's handy.
I don't write anything down, but I just go there and go like, oh, what was it? And I rewind a bit and I'm like, oh yeah.
That's super handy.
Yeah.
And you do that in what app are you
I
doing
use
that
Audacity for that. So even if I don't require a recording from my guests, like I'm always happy to run Audacity and just, record extra audio for them or add markers for them if they want.
Right.
Because, Techsploder chat with yours truly. Hang on.
There we go. Marcello, what's up? Tudo. I am Liam. Oh, that's Liam. Hey, Liam. How you doing? Liam Spradlin, I believe. I'm sorry, I can't confirm. Yes, it is. Okay, it is Liam. I had to enlarge the video. I'm using the what is it? The Elgato prompter, which is excellent.
Ooh.
But the screen on it is far enough away, and all the UI interface stuff is so small that my aging eyes, I can read certain things that I can't read other things.
Not your aging eyes.
Yeah, my aging eyes.
Okay, wait. I have to jump through some hoops here. This is fun. So it's telling me hang on. It's telling me to head to Instagram, create live video. Let's see if we can do that. It requires a professional account, which I think I do have. Okay, so let's see. Create Live video. Okay, so that seems to be
Oh,
an option. Oh, we're
yeah.
getting somewhere. Hang on.
Dang.
Live video. If you don't see this, ensure you have. Okay, add a title and choose an audience. Copy the stream key and paste it below. Okay, I've never done this. Let me break my
I'm
Instagram
super
right now.
curious.
It'll be interesting.
I don't know that I've ever witnessed
Audience,
live streaming to Instagram through StreamYard.
Public. Okay, add a title. Techsploder.
Techsploder.
I can't spell it. It's too early.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Text SPLODER.
DER.
Chat
Yep.
with yours truly.
You've now done this like 3 times.
Yeah, but now you think I'd copy and paste that. Here, I'm copy and pasting that. Next. And okay, here's my stream key.
Oh, so you actually had to go into Instagram to do that specifically?
Oh yeah. Yeah, don't worry
you're
though.
Okay.
I'm setting up. So
I'm surprised that the StreamYard interface didn't handle all that, but maybe it's a one-time setup, and then in the future you can just
let's
do
see what
it, I
happens.
guess.
Let's see what happens.
I'm super
We're
curious.
doing it. Jason, this is amazing.
This is an aspect of StreamYard I've not seen yet.
It did it. And what is happening here? You are live. I am live.
So I'm on your Instagram.
Can you look? Yeah.
Would it be, where would I find it? Not finding it.
Okay, hang on. I had to hit a button in Instagram, so I don't know. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Hey. Oh, somebody
live.
joined.
Okay, I see it. Hold on. Hold on. Yep. You're live.
Dude, this was worth it.
Was it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, we jumped through
I
like
hope so. I think so.
We jumped through like a million hoops to make it happen, which I kind of dig.
From your perspective, is it the kind of thing, does it seem like if you were to do this again in the future, you'd have to jump through the same hoops in Instagram? Or at this point, would it be just like a click of a button, name the thing, and it would go? Like you had to set up a key, right?
Yeah, I mean, let me see what happens when we're done the podcast and I look in my StreamYard account now that I have one, see how it pops up, if it's like preset. But I think that key is either, I'm not sure if that key is a one-time key for all broadcasts.
That's what I'm wondering.
Or if it's a per episode key. We're being super nerdy here. Let's talk about something more interesting.
All right. Let's do an actual show. Now that you have gone through those hoops, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, but I appreciate you pointing it out because this is kind of fun, honestly.
Yeah, and like I said, it hasn't really been on my radar until yesterday, and now I'm like, oh, well, I'm gonna mention this to everyone that I bring on my podcast because that's a great discovery mechanism. Wesley, how you doing? Wesley says, I love you, Myriam.
Oh, thank
Good to
you.
see you, Wesley.
And for those of you apparently listening to this stream on my Instagram right now, because somehow we've managed to make that work, please let me know if you want me to do this on my own podcast, because apparently I should be able to do that at some point.
Yeah.
Exciting.
You're not using StreamYard, but maybe your
but I'm
system
pretty sure
does allow for it?
Zencaster lets me do that. I need to look into it.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Hold the line. We are streaming. We are recording in all the places. I'm going to do a little intro-y thing, and then we'll get right into it. And then, probably like 45 minutes. I'll probably have you done at like the top of the hour, if that's cool.
Sweet.
I'm excited. Thank you for being
into
here,
it.
Myriam. I'm going to remove you from the stage momentarily, and then I will bring you back in a moment. Don't worry.
Okay, listeners on Instagram, I'll be back.
You will be back. That's right. Okay. All right, everybody. Stand by. And unless you see smoke pouring out of it, once I hit this button, everything worked. Here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Techsploder podcast. I am your host, Jason Howell, and I'm so excited to be here. It is a Thursday, first of all, so if you subscribe to this podcast and you're used to getting it on Fridays, the new day is Thursday. It just worked better for my schedule, so I'm happy to make the change. And I'm happy to do this episode. This show is really all about me having an opportunity to sit down with people, my friends in technology, to get to know them a little bit better, to really understand. I kind of like to put it as the tech origins story, because we all love technology, and we all got here in different ways, but there's so much about our stories that are similar as well. So I'm going to just go ahead and bring my guest right on. Today's guest is Myriam Joire, who I have worked with for many years now, podcaster with the excellent Mobile Tech Podcast, journalist, having worked for Engadget and Pocket Now. I could even be missing some outlets there.
I do a lot of freelance work, so you can pretty much name any major publication that's probably written for them at some point. Android
Indeed.
Police, Android Central. Right now, currently Hot Hardware a lot. A lot of my phone reviews are there. Forbes, Tech Radar, but Tech Radar is mostly car stuff. And then, that's a few of them. For those of you who are New Yorkers and who like more lifestyle-oriented tech, there's also geekspin.co.
Dang,
which
you
is
keep
all
yourself
about
busy.
Lifestyle tech.
Yeah. Well, and not just the journalist stuff that we're talking about, the writing of the articles and the podcasting. Also a smartwatch aficionado, I think I can say. You spent time at
One plus
Pebble.
watch 2. Sorry.
Pebble during the salad years of smartwatches, though.
Oh my God, Pebble. Good times. I was at Engadget and they just reached out and said, hey, do you want to work for us? And I was like, I haven't done engineering in a while. I don't know if you want to hire me. I'm a little rusty. And they're like, no, it's about, doing like marketing, PR, evangelism.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I'll do that. So I ended up at Pebble. It was fun.
You do see a lot of that, or at least I've witnessed a lot of that in the world of tech journalism. As a journalist, now I haven't been exposed to this on a personal level because I've just been podcasting for 20 years, but I've seen a lot of like written word journalists writing for so many years for an outlet or a couple of outlets in the world of technology, and then suddenly they move into the PR realm or they move into the advisory realm and stuff like that. What is it about that job that makes it so appealing for companies like Pebble to say, hey, I want Myriam Joire to do this? Is it just because it's high visibility? They know your work, they know your voice in your writing and that sort of stuff?
I think that's part of it. I think that's also in this case, it was like, I could bring in all my relationships with the media, right? Because as a journalist, I'm friends with all of you all. So it was like they didn't have access to that. They had a PR agency and they were struggling getting the word out. They were still in the early days, and I made it explode. I launched Pebble Steel and CS for them, and I got them
Pebble
more coverage
Steel.
there than like even their crowdfunding did. So I think that's kind of what they were betting on, and they got that. But at the same time, for me, it was more like I hit the glass ceiling at Engadget. There was no way I was going to go higher from where I was. And EIC was on the table, editor-in-chief, and I would have taken that. But the powers that be, I'm a little too, you know me well. I'm a little too rough around the edges and a little too honest and a little too brutal sometimes. And I think that they knew that was going to happen. And so after a lot of conversations with various executives at the time AOL that was running Engadget, it was clear to me that it wasn't going to happen. So I kind of hit that glass ceiling. So it's like, okay,
Sure.
I could stay and do what I do and do what I love. And, I loved it. Or I can take on a new challenge and do something different. And that's what I did, because I get bored so easily.
Well, I mean, just looking through, just like the last, I'd say 20 years of your career, in leading up to this episode anyways, this is what I really enjoy about this show, is that I learn new things about people who I feel like I know pretty well through, working with folks like you over the years. But like, you've done so many very different directions. You've done the journalist thing, and still doing that, of course, podcasting, of course, but you've worked for the tech companies. You've worked in video games, and not just video games, but I did not know this about you, Myriam. You worked in audio engineering in the world of video games. And I mean, audio is, near and dear to my heart. Talk about the genesis of that a little bit. I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just to clarify, I worked on a software, like coding the audio, like not production. Like I worked closely with sound engineers and people who created the sounds. But I mostly made sure it would work in the game, basically, like taking their vision and porting it into C and assembly code on various platforms. How I fell into it is really kind of interesting, because when I was in university, so I'm pretty old, I'm just warning everyone, like, I'm not going to say an age, but you can figure out by the dates. But in the early 90s, I was in college finishing up and graduating. and I was studying electrical engineering, but halfway kind of through my degree, there was like a kind of an opportunity to do something else. I was in Canada. I was born and raised in France, and I moved to Canada to go to college on an exchange originally, and I stayed because I enjoyed it. But
Where in Canada? Were you in Montreal?
No, in London, Ontario, which is just outside of the Toronto area.
Yep.
And so I was kind of like, basically as a foreign student, I was allowed to work only on campus because I wasn't a Canadian, so I couldn't just take a summer job at the video store or something like the average college student would, right? So I decided, hey, great, I'm on campus, what am I going to do, right? So I just approached anybody who had a computer lab and said, hey, I'm a bit of a computer nerd because I kind of self-taught myself computers in the 80s as a teenager. What can I do for you? And I got some jobs like that. And one of the jobs I got was to work on this lab doing research on hearing not hearing loss, but on hearing perception in children. So just bear with me here. I've always been really into audio and into computers. So I had already kind of a lot of knowledge around how audio is processed, DSP and that kind of stuff. And so I had studied that in college, partially self-taught, partially. And they were looking for someone to basically make these games that would let them test the hearing of children. Children, you go to a hearing test, like they sit you down, they put earbuds or headphones in you, they run these test tones, and you tell them what you can hear by pushing a button, and they give you an idea of how good your hearing is. You can't do that with a 4-year-old. Like, they're not going to know what to press. So what we did is that, like, what if we do video games that they play in such a way that it presents them with sounds, and that because of how they perceive the sounds, they're going to react to the game one way or another way. They have to respond
to it, and they want to respond to it because it's fun, because it's a game.
I had never written a game, right? And so I was charged with, like, think about the most casual, basic game you could play today on Facebook. It's basically what I did, but in 1992 on a DOS PC, running in a computer lab, hooked up to some audio equipment. So, but a lot of my work was related to, like, making this, like, this is not like today where you can have a computer just play sound. This is like the early 90s. No computer had sound cards. Like,
no, you had Sound Blaster or whatever. You had to put a card in there.
We had like $1,000 high-end sound card in there connected to like some testing equipment. And so anyway, I did that. And then once I left college, and became a Canadian, well, not right away, but I became a resident, I could actually work anywhere. So I moved to Vancouver, Canada, and where I live right now part-time. I live in San Francisco and Vancouver. I split my time. I'm actually in Vancouver today. And I basically applied for jobs. I was like, I'm couch surfing at my friend's house. I'm done college. I'm graduated. I've got a degree. I've got some experience working in these computer labs in the summer. Let me see what I can do. And I got a job. This is like 94, 95. For a startup that was doing VoIP before Skype, right? Think this is, there's no Skype. Like, you can't do Zoom. Like, that doesn't exist, okay? And so now we're trying to make that work. And so they hired me based on my experience, and I worked for that company for like a month. And they went out of business in that time, like the first month I was there. And they, small startup, not too many people, not a lot of money. And this is before. And
what year was this? What?
This is like 94. This is before .com even, right? Like, investment money wasn't quite as plentiful as it is today. And so in Vancouver too, like, you're not in Silicon Valley, so not quite the same. But the bottom line is
this is also kind of before the real, like, start of the ramp up for the early internet. Even,
exactly.
This
we're
is like
just
real
started,
borderline cusp.
We're talking like Amazon is just starting to sell books here, okay? And the web browser is 2 years old, right? And it's like, Netscape is brand new, and it's the hot thing. Yeah. Anyway, but here's the thing. So they couldn't pay me because they ran out of money. So they said, keep your computer. And it was this really high-end computer with really high-end audio in it. And I was just like, yeah. So I took the computer home, and then I put the word out, hey guys, I got laid off. I need some job. Need to pay the rent, because by that point, I just moved, so I got an apartment and everything, and a typical startup fashion, carpet gets pulled from under your feet. It's a little rough. Anyway, I got another job, and the job was, get this, you guys are gonna laugh, a company that was in the early days of gambling online. So casino games in Indian reservations using a network. So imagine slot machines, but like on a screen instead of physical, and they're all connected to Ethernet to a server in a room somewhere, and the server processes transactions with the banks. So it's actually kind of interesting. And I worked not on the front end, not on the games part, but on all the back end software, networking, financial, real time, stuff that was mission critical. So it taught me a lot about being very rigorous with my coding. Until then, I was self-taught, so it wasn't the most rigorous thing. But it gave me a job, and it gave me an opportunity to learn new stuff. And I became a networking guru because I already had a lot of experience with Linux for my university days, because in university you do a lot of Unix stuff. And so Linux became a thing. And then I worked on Mac. I worked on all these crazy like Silicon Graphics and Sun workstations in college. So I had a lot of kind of experience, cross-platform stuff and audio on cross-platform. And so out of nowhere, I was in a bunch of forums online at the time. Like this is like the early internet. So, Usenet and the forums. And as I told you, I'm an audio nerd. So what did I do back in the day? I used to record a lot of bootleg concerts with my mini disc. And also before that, I had a digital audio tape recorder before that, like one of those portable Sony ones. And then I went to mini disc because it was even more stealth. And I used to mount microphones on my glasses, these tiny little microphone capsules, like make it look like anyway. So I was
identify with what you're saying right now.
I was super active in these forums back then. And one of the guys on the forum goes, hey, I'm at a company, we're making a video game, and we would love your expertise. Like, we need someone like you. Do you want to come to the office and chat with us? And so this is like 1995, 96. And I'd sit here in Vancouver. These guys left Electronic Arts, who's based here in Vancouver at the time, didn't have a big presence in the US yet. And they said, hey, we got funding from a publisher, I think it was Activision, to do was it Activision? I can't remember. To do this real-time strategy game on PC, and we need somebody to create audio and an audio engine for us. And so I'm sitting in this startup office with 9 other founders basically, and we chit chat, and at the end they're like, okay, you're hired. Like, this is how it worked. Like, there was no video game school back then. Like, it was just
we just know we like you. We know you're talented. We'll figure it out. The details, the messy details.
Yeah, and I spent like the next 4 years or so working on Homeworld, the real-time strategy game for PC, the critically acclaimed, award-winning game that now has been relaunched and has got a bunch of sequels after that. And I wrote the entire audio pipeline for that game. And now you have to put yourself into
Sierra Studios.
Right? It was Sierra, you're right, not Activision. So here's the thing. Your smartwatch today, even the dumb smartwatches, like the ones that don't have a real OS on there, like have a real-time OS, are perfectly capable of running the sound engine that was running inside a Homeworld without even breaking a sweat today. But here's the thing. Back then, you had, the base platform for our game was a Pentium 200 megahertz with, MMX extensions. It was nothing. Like, think about it, a 200 megahertz single core computer today. It's a joke, right? So I had to make a sound engine run on that. And because sound acceleration didn't really exist, like there was Sound Blaster, and there was like I don't know. There's another bunch of competing things at the time. A3D, I think, was another one. It's a direct sound on Windows. Anyway, the point is you couldn't rely on the hardware to have acceleration. So I decided, screw that. I've got enough experience to make audio run on really simple processors from working in video games on DOS. I can figure this out on Windows, no problem. Especially in that time, the computers are like Moore's Law, they were like 10 times faster. So I was like, I'll make a sound engine that runs in software only. And that way it treats the output to the sound card just like a DAC. Doesn't matter what you have as a sound card. It's like you have a speaker, it'll come out as a freaking speaker. Like it doesn't matter what it is.
But at this time, like how much like actual software engineering expertise or experience or anything did you have? Were you just kind of making it up as you go, or was that?
I mean, I'd been coding. I'd been coding for 20 years. I started coding in the late 70s and self-taught. And then in my engineering work, I did a lot of coding.
Okay.
After the grant ran out for the children, hearing test stuff. I actually ended up working in medical imaging, like X-rays and MRIs and CT scans in research. So I actually ended up coding, instead of audio, it was image processing, like all the stuff that we do today with edge detection and like the stuff that makes self-driving cars drive, all that stuff.
Yeah,
But the early
yeah.
days of that, when it would literally take 10 seconds to process one image, and never mind processing real-time video coming to you at 60 frames per second, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
indeed.
the resolution on that image was 320 by 320.
And now
Anyway.
it's like mission critical. It's doing it so fast that it's propelling
Yeah.
a vehicle 90 miles an hour down the freeway.
The point is, I had the creds, like I had a lot of experience with stuff, and I could prove it, I could show it. So that's how I ended up with this job at Relic Entertainment, which is the studio that launched Homeworld and with Sierra. And so, I wrote the sound engine, and what's unique about it is that it runs in the frequency domain, not in the time domain. And so it lets you do things like filtering very, very quickly, cheaply, and efficiently. It does require a final step of converting back to time domain, which is a little expensive, but I took one of the graphics guys and sat him down in a room with me for a day or two, and we optimized the crap out of that, rewrote it in assembly, and it was super fast. So with 10% CPU of a Pentium 200 megahertz, I could mix together 32 sound streams basically. In real time. And also the other challenge we had, and that's why they hired me, is that we needed to put 4 hours of audio on a 650 megabyte CD. Now think about it. Back then there wasn't any
Oh,
700. There wasn't 700 megabyte CDs yet, like the 80-minute ones. There was only 74-minute CDs, which was 650 megabytes.
and MP3.
And MP3 was expensive to decode, right?
Yeah.
So I couldn't
Yeah,
do
it was
that.
not- that was early
So I
days.
created my own codec. Which was based on Sony's 8-track. We use it on mini disc because I looked at the patents and I basically copied it, and I wrote a codec. So the decoding was, and I optimized it for decoding to be cheap. So I created the tools to package the audio, and those would run for hours overnight to compress the audio in advance. So in game it was very fast, but pre-game it was very slow. Whereas
It had to load that.
if you look
on
at what
top.
Sony did, it was more equal because the recorders had to record as well as playback. So I kind of fudged it and made it work, and I managed to squeeze about the best I could do was 8:1 compression, which wasn't as good as MP3, but it was definitely better than 80 PCM and all the other non-frequency based codecs. And so I did my own codec. In fact, it's still out there. It's I can't remember.
Is it called the Tank Girl codec?
No, it's called the
or-
Relic sound system, I think. Anyway, I wrote a Winamp plugin. So if you run into a compressed audio file for Homeworld, if you manage to break down the CD and get into the big file that was all compressed and had all the stuff encoded and encrypted. If you manage to get in there, which people have, because by the way, I wrote the file IO stuff for the game, and I wrote all the encryption / copy protection, and since I'm anti-copy protection, I put a big hole in there, like on purpose. So Sierra was very happy because they got their copy protection. If you stuck the CD, you could you copied the CD, it wouldn't work. But the hole was so obvious that anyone with a hex editor and a bit of brains, you could be like, you could get in through the back end that I left wide open in there. So that's also
How did
the
Sierra
reason-
not catch that? I
because
guess they didn't check for
they're
that
not
sort of
software
thing back
engineers.
then.
They trusted us,
Yeah.
and I knew,
I got it.
and he created an entire ecosystem of mods for the game, which is,
Yeah.
I'm not taking credit
Awesome.
for that because this was in collaboration with the rest of my team. We agreed on this.
Sure.
But the point is that, we did a lot of really cool stuff with the audio in that game, and so you can find a Winamp plugin to play back those files if you manage to break into the game.
That's
And
amazing.
then you can kind of mix your own version of Homeworld audio if you want. We got Yes, the band, to make music for the game. That wasn't me. That was our sound designer who
Yeah.
had connections, and it was really awesome.
I was going to say, whose idea was that? That's
that was the
interesting.
idea of our CEO and founder and kind of main producer guy, Alex Garden. But anyway, it was good times, and I did that for a few years, and then I got poached by a company in Canada here called Black Box Games that made sports games and on consoles. And I'm like, I've never worked on consoles, and consoles are even more challenging because on PC at the time, by the time we finished Homeworld, everybody had a Pentium 3 or something. It was like
Yeah.
it had gone from the baseline, and that's where the software-based audio engine I wrote was really good because now we went from 32 voices at 22.5 kilohertz on a Pentium 200. But as soon as we got to Pentium 3, 1 gigahertz, whatever, we were able to do like 64 voices at 44.1 kilohertz because I made it so that it would scale, right? Etc. Anyway, but
Dang,
I want to. Consoles look really challenging to me because the hardware is much more restrictive. Also, what seemed even more challenging to me is let's make a sound engine that runs on all 3 consoles: Dreamcast, PlayStation, and Xbox. Xbox was a launch title for us, so Xbox original. And this was PlayStation 2, also a launch title. So and Dreamcast as an aside.
And what was the title of the game again?
The first game I worked on was NHL Hits 2002, a hockey game for, who was the publisher? EA maybe? I don't know. Anyway, the point is, I had to learn PlayStation 2. I had to learn
EA.
Wait, no,
EA Black Box.
no. Did we write?
No, publisher Midway. Midway.
Midway. That's what Midway. No, wait. It was GameCube. We didn't do Dreamcast. So it was GameCube, and there were launch titles on all 3. Because they're all coming out around the same time. Xbox, PS2, and GameCube. Brand new hardware. So I wrote a sound engine so that the game developers, the guys writing the game itself, didn't have to concern themselves with the specifics on how the sound worked on each platform. I abstracted it for them. And that was a lot of work because let me tell you, Xbox was more like a PC because it was an Intel-based thing, the original Xbox. So it was just basically direct sound. And then PlayStation 2 was DMA hardware, it had a hardware processor just for the audio and very small amounts of memory for the audio, and you had to deal everything. So double buffer, stream everything. And then GameCube was kind of similar. Anyway, I learned a lot and it was really exciting. And that got me a job. Oh, actually, I got laid off on 9/11, on the day of the Twin Towers attack.
Coincidental timing?
Complete coincidence,
complete coincidence. What a bad day.
Yeah, bad day. And so I was like, well, it could be worse. Anyway, so I got laid off because they were kind of the game was shipping basically. They were done with me and they were like, we need to downsize. They were having problems, and eventually they got acquired by EA. Go figure. They made sports games, But I moved on to San Francisco, so I got hired. At that point, I was a Canadian citizen. I had my passport, so it was easy to come to the U.S. and get a visa as a technical person, right? So I got a visa to work in San Francisco for Shaba Games. Shaba Games also made sports games, but they were more like extreme sports, like wakeboarding and skateboarding and BMX and that kind of stuff. And so Shaba was developing for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox as well. And we did Sean Murray games. Sean Murray is a wakeboarder. And so, and then we did a Shrek game where it's a wrestling game with Shrek characters. It's a lot of fun. And so I wrote a sound engine for them, and then in the middle of that, this brings us to around 2002, 2003. I got the job in 2002 in San Francisco. So in the middle of that, PlayStation Portable came out, PSP, and the CEO of our small startup, Shaba Games, that was funded by Activision, basically Activision bought Shaba and kept it at arm's length as a small independent studio, left us the frick alone so we didn't have to deal with the big machine. They came to us and said, this game here for PlayStation 2, this skateboarding game, we need it ported to PSP as a launch title, right? And it was Underground Remix 2, the game. So it was, it was like, oh my God, I get to work on a major game. This is really cool. But more important,
Remix 2.
Yeah.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
Tony Hawk.
Tony Hawk. Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned.
Got it.
Tony Hawk. And so
yeah, it's a major game. That's
right. And so I'm like launch title on
especially.
PSP. I get to play with a new platform, a new console. For me, this wasn't about video games. This was about I get to play with new nerd tech. Okay. So Tony Hawk's Underground Remix 2 was a challenge because it ran on PlayStation 2, and they're like, you have 3 months to port it to PSP.
Shrink that down.
And shrink it down. So I came up with all kinds of crazy audio technologies to shrink it down. And I made it work. And just to give you some anecdotal stuff, this is how crazy this stuff was back in the day. you would listen. You'd have to listen to the. Do you remember that the PlayStation Portable had a UMD, Universal Media Disc? Early versions did not have flash storage, so the content came on discs, this tiny little optical discs. So I had to like listen to optimize, basically to optimize the file I/O and the audio playback from the disc. I had to listen to this thing while it was spinning to see if it wasn't doing too many seeks and stuff, and optimize it. That's debugging by ear, instead. I mean, you can look at the code and see if it's seeking too much, but this was like the true test, right? And so I'm going to get super nerdy here, but I don't know if you guys know this, but Sony was really clever. In past optical formats, mini disc, CD, laser disc, whatever, the disc was constantly spinning at a constant speed, right? Or slowing down and speeding up based on where on the disc you were located, depending if it was CLV or CAV, right? So that's standard optical disc technology. But the PlayStation Portable, because the technology advanced so much in terms of optical playback, and they wanted to be as power efficient as possible, they did not spin the disc at a constant speed ever. What they did is they sent an impulse of juice to the motor for like a quarter of a second, which made it spin up at its full speed, and they used the inertia of the disc for the next 5 seconds to spin, to read. It would slow down as it was going. But because they had buffering, they were able to read the data, buffer it,
capture enough,
and
put it in the
deal
bucket.
with it in a constant stream of data later by playing back the buffer. This was brilliant because it would just send a pulse.
Okay, but what is the benefit of that versus the constant
You're only
speed? Is that a
sending
power
electricity
benefit?
to the motor every time you send a pulse. So you're very efficient. And so
very efficient from a power perspective.
So
it
takes a bit of juice to spin up the disc first, but once the disc is already spinning, it's got inertia. So you put
it's
a
like
pulse.
regenerative braking, almost.
But because of that, there was a whole bunch of challenges. Any seeks would mess with that, so you really had to avoid any seeking. So I remember this very distinctly, having to fix the engine to make that happen, stuff like that. So anyway, I did that, and then I ended up at Lucasfilm, writing games for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii. And that was really cool because at the next gen platforms, again, I wrote a sound engine for what was it called? Star Wars: The Force Unleashed.
That's right. I saw that you had a couple of Star Wars titles in your.
Anyway, I worked on those, and that's my sound engine. And then
you have a very rich background in the
I
engineering
spent
of sound for these
20
games.
years in video games making.
It's just an aspect of you that I wasn't aware of until today.
I spent that doing 12 major titles. Anyway, then next thing I got a job in Seattle where basically they're like, we have this problem with this game, and we need it fixed. We're hiring the best people with a lot of money. We'll move you to Seattle for a year to do this contract. So I did that, and something Path of the Furon. I can't remember the name of the game, but also a PS3, Xbox 360 / Wii game. And then from there, I got hired by Sony to be the evangelist for audio on PlayStation. So I was in front of conferences, talking to developers, preaching the good, yes, PlayStation 3 and, the cell processors and, HDMI, audio over HDMI, 8-channel, all that good stuff. And then I saw the launch of PlayStation Vita, and I was highly influential in the audio engine of PlayStation, like the audio hardware, because we worked closely with Japan, because Japan had finally realized that their bread and butter was in America, and that they should probably collaborate with the US branch of Sony Computer Entertainment and actually get us to define how the console should be made. That was cool because that was the first ARM-based product I worked on. And it was... From there, it was all downhill, and I did smartphones after that.
Yeah. And before we get there, I do need to take a quick break. And then on the other side of the break, that's what I'm really curious about. Like having set the foundation of like this rich history in video games, how does what comes next come next? That's going to come up here in a second. All right. So when I hear you talk in detail about all of this experience, I mean, you haven't just like dabbled in video game, coding.
No, but
You've
at this
spent
point,
a
like
lot of
people
focused
would,
time on
like
it.
people were hiring me. Like I was approached, but like I didn't seek jobs. Like,
You weren't
you've
seeking
noticed
anymore.
that
You were
every
known for this.
every job that I got along the way, after I got that meeting with 9 people in the startup at Relic
Yeah.
to do Homeworld, was they called me and said, "Come work for us." Like I never did any
Okay.
of that.
So was the transition opportunity? Was it disillusionment? Was it like what drives this sudden shift in your career to go from all of this background that you've built up a name for yourself in this?
I was
and
bored.
Then it was boredom. Okay. Yeah,
No,
disillusionment, boredom, something along those
let me
lines.
explain more. Okay, so here's what happened. Audio engines were becoming a thing, out of the box audio engines.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of them already, and then you had Unreal, and like Epic did Unreal Engine, and then what we got, Unity as well, and those, the hardware became so fast and so powerful that there was no need for someone like me anymore. Right? Like we didn't have constraints at the hardware level with audio that required specialist code, special code. You could just be essentially wasteful with your audio on the hardware.
Totally.
The hardware
Yeah,
was,
that makes sense.
Like look at what you can do today on like the cheapest MacBook as a DAW, right? Like it's like you can like pile up 1,000 plugins on it and it'll still run,
Yeah.
right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we're at a point where none of this matters anymore. And so my what drove me was creating this new tech, and I knew that was dying, and I think the only opportunity I had was to jump into smartphone development, but it was only Apple, and it's the only name in the game, and I did a bit of that. So I got hired. My last job in video games was Dolby, the sound people. They were trying to make like a voice over IP solution for massively multiplayer games that needed, like, if you're like in a battle royale kind of thing, when you're listening to your friends who are playing with you, you're like commando together, and like we made it so that you could hear the sounds, like you could hear them talk on their radio from right behind you, like using the Atmos stuff.
Yeah.
So we were trying to do that, and it worked pretty well, but they weren't able to market it, so very few game studios actually used the product. And so eventually I was made redundant, and they gave me a nice little exit package because they couldn't really justify keeping me because I was costing them a lot of money, and I was part of that team. But it was cool because I got to learn a lot of cool stuff. I got to play with NVIDIA GPUs to do audio ray tracing, basically making audio reflects off surfaces in real time to simulate environments and stuff. So that was, my nerd heart was very happy at Dolby, and Dolby is a really great place to work. Much more chill than video games, like much less stress. But again, I was a bit bored because I wasn't really challenged. I didn't have that hard pace that you get in journalism and in EMS and in, like, I need that, and video games, you had that. It was like constantly like sleep under the desk kind of thing.
Yep.
I'm a workaholic, basically. Yeah. So, but what happened was I was fascinated back in the late 90s, like around the time I got the job for Homeworld, about how computers were getting smaller and smaller and miniaturized, and how I could see in the future the convergence of the cell phone, the pocket computer, like the PDA at the time, and the point and shoot camera. And I'm like, all of this is going to be one device. And I called that like 98, 97. And of course, we got BlackBerry, we got Symbian, we got all that. And so I was really following the stuff from the sidelines. And what really got me excited was blogging. When Engadget, Gizmodo launched, right? These guys were irreverent. They didn't care. They weren't like boring like the normal press and like the web media at the time, the little bit of web media. They were great, and I read them extensively, and I loved it, and I kept informed that way instead of reading magazines, which I'd done before. Like, imagine yourself like having to wait for the magazine to tell you about this new Apple product. Like, can you imagine
that was just the way it was. It was just the way it was.
So basically, I'm like, okay, I can do this. Maybe I should blog, right? Like, one of my friends was working as a developer on Ruby on Rails, and he's like, I hate writing documentation for my job, but I found that writing a blog about something I'm excited about is making me a better writer for my work stuff. And at the time, I had to write documentation a lot for my engines and stuff. And I was just like, can't I just show you how this works? Anyway, so I started blogging to kind of develop my writing skills, and my blog took off. Like, my approach was mostly at first to take apart computers and things I had around and mod them, right? Because I have a pretty solid background in electronics because I studied electrical engineering for a while. And also when I was a kid, I took everything apart and most of the time broke it and didn't put it back together. But sometimes I succeeded. So I had a pretty good experience soldering and doing things. So I did that, posted on my blog, became popular. I also posted about, like, I would go and buy a cool new smartphone at the AT&T store, or at the time Singular or whatever. And then, California had a 30-day return policy with no strings attached. So I would return it to test, play it out, try it out. So I got into smartphones like that. And then Nokia had WOM World of Mouth World, which was their blogger WOM,
Okay.
World of Mouth World, which was their I know
World.
weird, but they're Finns,
Yeah.
they're weird. Anyway, they had this for bloggers, so I got Nokia phones to review, and then it snowballed from there. I got Engadget started publishing, reposting some of my stuff. Hackaday reposted some of my stuff. Gizmodo reposted some of my stuff, and one day I got a call from, I think it was Josh Topolsky or Nilay at Engadget at the time, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to write a column for us once a month about like hacking SIM cards or whatever?" And I was like, "Sure, that sounds fun." I'm working at my Dolby job, making a huge amount of cash every month. I'm like, I can spend some time doing this. I'm bored anyway, so I did. And the next thing you know, they're like, "Could you come to CS with us?" I'm like, "I'll take a week off of work and go to CS with you guys." Yeah, sure. So then I do CS, and then the spring. Remember the Palm 3?
Yeah.
The Palm Pre 3 when it was
yeah.
launched. Remember that event? We got the Pixie as well. We got not the Pixie.
Pixie, yes, I remember.
No, the other one, the tiny one with the slider.
Is this the one you're talking about?
No,
this
that's anyway.
This is
I
the
can't
Palm Pre 3 is what we're looking at.
Yeah,
right
no, I'm
now.
talking about the tiny little one they came out that had a sliding keyboard as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, and they came out with a pad. Remember the tablet? That all came out the same event.
Okay.
We're at this event, and at the end we're done, and we go to Mel's Diner of all places in the Marina District.
Yep.
And they sent us. I remember I'm sitting with Sean Hollister, who's at The Verge right now. I'm sitting with Nilay Patel. I'm sitting with Josh Topolsky, and I think who else was with us that day? Anyway, I'm forgetting. But they're like, "Hey guys, confidentially, we're leaving Engadget like in a month, and we're sick and tired of AOL, and we're just gonna do our own thing, and we want you to join us." I was like, "Okay, sounds good." And so I said, "Yeah, I'm in. All right." Whatever that means. To me at the time, it meant like I'm freelancing for you guys doing some articles, because I'm working at Dolby or whatever. Next thing you know, this is becoming serious. And
that was, of course, their project was This Is Our Next.
This Is Our Next.
This Is Our Next,
Verge,
which
right?
led to The Verge,
and
right?
So then I get a phone call from the editorial director at AOL Engadget saying, "Holy freak balls, we're losing all of our senior editors. You have management experience from your video game jobs. We can hire you as a manager, and you know the blog, and you know the voice, and you've done CS with us, and you know mobile inside out. Would you run mobile for us? Would you be," because at the time there was Engadget Mobile as a separate site, "would you be the EIC of Engadget Mobile?" And I was like, I work in video games and make a ton of money right now. Like, how much of a pay cut are we talking about here? And they're like, "Don't worry about that. We have deep pockets. We'll make it work." I was like, "Okay, well, I am worried about that."
We just need the right person. And you are obviously the right
So
person.
they made me
We
a
need
good
it
offer.
fast.
They made me a good offer. It was a pay cut, but it was still a good offer. And I said, "You know what? In the same way as I've always taken the bull by the horn, I was like, I'm just going to try this. I can go back to video games in 3 months if it doesn't work out, So I did. And next thing you know, I'm a tech journalist. Woohoo!
And that really carved the path for the Myriam that I've been,
And
that
so,
I've worked with. over
then,
the
I
years.
did all the trade show, and I managed a team, and I just like all that editorial calendar and all the stuff that you're familiar with from running Twit, back in the day, or from doing your shows at Twit, I should say. Then after that, I discovered Pebble. So just so you take context for the next thing, Pebble did a Kickstarter, right? We all know that. That was how they became famous. That is my doing in many ways. So here's the thing. Eric Majakovsky approached me at CS before, I think, 2011. And at the time showed me the prototype, the Impulse, which is a color OLED smartwatch prototype. They built like 1,000 of them that worked with BlackBerry only, and it was very much an open source. You write your own code, you write your own apps kind of deal, like very much proto Pebble. But he showed me that thing. He's like, "Would you review that?" And I'm like, "Ooh, wearables, compute, like the next logical thing, right?" Like I've seen the convergence happen. iPhone is here now, and Android
and we
is
haven't
here.
seen a we haven't seen a wearable at this point that works. You know, of any type, really.
Sony was making some smartwatches that were really nice, but they were kind of
there were some, but yes, there was not a lot of movement. There was not a lot of innovation.
I'll play with it, and it ended up being me like saying, you know, I'm not going to review it because this kind of sucks, but let me give you some feedback. And so I gave him some feedback, and then a year and a half passed, and I get a call from Eric or an email. I get an email from it's Sunday. Imagine it's Sunday. I have to review a smartphone. I have a very important smartphone. Like there's a deadline, it's February or March or something, and it's like I think Unpacked had just happened, and I'm reviewing some Galaxy phone. Like I've got a deadline. I'm like I'm losing my mind because I'm always behind on everything. And I get an email, and it's Eric. And Eric goes, "Hey, would you come to Palo Alto tonight? We want to show you something." I'm like, You're nuts. I'm not driving to Palo Alto. It's an hour drive. Screw you. So I said, listen, I'm super busy with a Samsung deadline. If you want to come to San Francisco and show me the thing at the coffee shop near my house, I'm game. And we can get coffee and hang out. I'll take a break from my work. I need a break anyway. So what do you say? And he says, sure. So Smart. I go for coffee at Farley's in my neighborhood in Potrero Hill, and I run into Eric and his CTO. I can't remember his name. And another guy. I can't remember their name. I worked with them. I'm sorry, guys. Anyway.
This is a while ago. It's okay.
They're wonderful people. And they show me, get this, they show me a board running Pebble OS on the right side screen, on the actual screen, which looks like the iPod at that point, right? And they show me a wearable 3D printed Pebble watch without the guts in it that I can wear to see what it feels like and looks like.
So and use your imagination.
And they show me the Kickstarter video. And I'm like, holy frick balls. They broke the smartwatch magic. They did it. This is it. This is what we've been waiting. I'm like, my journalist brain is just like, right? So guess what I did? I said, I want an exclusive on this. I'll write it up to publish tomorrow. No, first I'm like, when are you launching this? And they're like, tonight at midnight. And I'm like, no, you're not. My role as advisor had begun, to startups had begun.
Right,
I'm like, no, you're not. You're launching it at 3 a.m., which is 6 a.m. Eastern time, because if you launch it, it'll get lost. But we want to do a soft launch. No. You launch it at 3 a.m. and I will write it for 3 a.m. You give me the exclusive. That's exactly what we did. I finished my Samsung review. I stayed up till 3 in the morning. I wrote up this quick, 500-word, check out this cool thing. Here's a Kickstarter campaign. Go support it. I think this is the smartwatch you've always wanted. I slept in, right? Because I'm exhausted. Embargo is set for the Samsung. My team's got it. I'm like, I wake up at noon, right? I'm just like, oh, finally a day off. And I looked,
a normal day.
And I look at my phone and I look at my laptop, and I'm just like literally inundated with emails and text messages, and I'm like, oh, something broke. Oh no. And I'm quickly realizing, at the time, by the way, there was no Slack. We were on IRC for our intercommunications at Engadget. And I'm like, no, everything's fine. They're like, so Myriam, we know you're asleep because you don't start work till noon anyway. But that Pebble thing, they made $10 million already.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I've created a monster. And then also Samsung reviews up and everything is like, but anyway, I'm getting like comment. I want like CNN wants a comment, and I'm just like, oh wow, goodness. I did not expect that to go this way. So needless to say, Eric loved me. And the next thing you know is they launched the watch at CES. I get to use it. I wear it every day. I love it. I review it. Actually, no, I think it was somebody else on the team. Zach reviewed it because I didn't have time because I had to focus on phones, sadly. But I get a call from Eric. I'm in Vancouver here, just visiting. At the time, I wasn't spending much time here. And I'm just visiting, just down the street, like 2 blocks from my house right now. And I'm like, at the time, there was no roaming, free or anything. So I'm like, if I take this call, it's going to cost me money. But it's Eric. Okay. Hey, Eric, I'm roaming. Can I talk to you on Skype? Find some Wi-Fi, get on Skype. he goes, "Hey, how's it going? You want to come join the team?" And I'm like, "What the F are you talking about, Eric?" And I'm like, he's like, "Oh, no, I don't want to hire you as an engineer. I want to hire you to do our PR, marketing, and evangelism, blah blah blah." And at the time, as I said, I kind of hit this. I hit the glass ceiling at Engadget. There was another reorg. They fired our editor, our awesome editor in chief, Tim Stevens, and they were looking for a new editor in chief. And I put my name in the hat, as it were, and it wasn't going anywhere. The management at AOL was, unfortunately, all the cool people had left, and I'm too much of a, S disturber, as it were, to get that job. So I knew that maybe this was my way to do something else. So I joined Pebble. It took me a little while. I waited till after the Apple event where they launched the iPhone 5S and 5C, because I was the only person with a relation of Apple at Engadget. So I wasn't going to let them leave them dry and high. So I did that for them. I reviewed the iPhones, and then I left. And then I worked at Pebble for a year and a half, and then Apple Watch came, and we kind of had a strategy on how to compete, but Eric was not.
I mean, how do you compete with Apple when
the problem is that Eric still
we
wanted to go big, us the executives, but Eric wanted to keep it like very DIY, small, open source, and everything. And I'm all for that, but that's not how you compete. And so I just decided that maybe it was time to leave, because I didn't want to have to deal as the head, as the public face, other than Eric, of the company, deal with, repercussions of what I thought at the time were bad decisions. So I left, and then I realized, you know what? I need to take a break, but I also don't want to sit on my laurels for too long. So I put the word out that I was available for jobs. And the next thing you know is, when I was at Pebble, Eric would kind of loan me out to other startups that were part of Y Combinator as well. And Myriam knows how to do PR. Myriam knows how to do marketing. Myriam knows how to do evangelism. Talk to her about your product and how you can do stuff. And I was like, maybe I should do that for a living.
There's a thing here. There's something here. Yeah. Well, it sounds absolutely like you were really set up into a perfect position to do that. Absolutely.
I jumped into that. Mostly it started with, there was a company out of Taiwan that was making a really radically new 3D printer. I can't remember their name now, but they hired me to do their Kickstarter campaign for them. And that's another thing. I had a lot of experience with Kickstarter and crowdfunding.
With the crowdfunding,
and Indiegogo was at the time that was huge, right?
I was just going to say that was a really big time for crowdfunding. Yeah. Crowdfunding, is kind of like leveled off or, kind of plateaued at this point. But then that was a really big deal. That was a big moment.
So, this was an exciting time, the mid-2000s. This was around 2000. I left Pebble 2014. So 2015 was a year where I helped launch a whole bunch of really cool connected devices on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And my business model was, I help you out. You pay me a little bit of money while I'm doing this so that I can survive. And then I take like 5% of your campaign, or something. And I made so much money.
I bet
it was a bonanza.
Some of those campaigns, the amount of money that's coming in on a campaign like that, that adds up fast.
It was quite the thing, and I still did the journalism, but really not much. Like I wasn't writing; I was doing a podcast, but not too seriously. I was kind of losing my journalistic angle, and so eventually I was like, as the crowdfunding got a little more, I kind of got soiled in a way by some bad actors, right? Like things kind of slowed down a bit, and I knew that I could see it coming. So I diversified a little bit my consulting business, which is what I do now, consulting. But in addition, I said, hey, I should get my voice back out there. And I started this podcast 2015, or when was it? 17? Yeah. 7 years ago.
You're talking about the Mobile Tech Podcast.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
And then I as kind of like an outlet for me to get my devices to justify my infinite craving for technology, and then also
and to keep yourself connected to it and fresh.
Also keep my consulting brain fresh with advice from my clients. So basically that's what I do, and also the writing. I needed to get back to writing, and so I did a bit of I do a bit of reviews here and there. Once or twice a month I write something, and then I have a regular column on Tech Radar about car tech and EVs, because I've always been a big car nerd, and I was early on in the EV revolution as a consumer, as a user. So that's what I do. That's my life, guys.
That's your life.
That's where I'm at, and who knows what the next thing's gonna be, right?
Well, one thing that I can say, like hearing you kind of walk through this, and prior to this conversation, kind of taking a look at it on the screen, and then kind of hearing you walk through it, it seems like you've been really good at giving everything that you have into a particular thing and building up your experience, your knowledge base, your relationships around that. Like, you've been very good at having opportunities presented to you because you left your previous opportunity in such a good place. Like, you made your mark, and you're so varied in all the different facets of your career. I'm so impressed. That's really cool.
I mean, I feel, look, I'm very privileged. I'm lucky that I have a lot of good connections, and I hustle, and I'm also, I grew up with a lot of, opportunity, right? Like, I got to play with computers really early on in the late 70s. They're not easy. Like, I started
What computers at that time?
Yeah, I started with like home computers, right? Like, my first computers were not computers I owned. I would go to a computer lab at school or at my friend's house who had more money, who could afford
go to
one,
a Radio Shack,
and play with it. And in Europe, the landscape was a little different. ZX81, which was a Timex Sinclair 1000, was a big part of my early days. ZX Spectrum as well. I stayed with Sinclair quite a ways. I actually had a QL, which was their 68,000 based computer, around the same time as, like, a little before Amiga and Atari ST. So I stayed with Sinclair for a long time personally, but I also, again, my cross-platform approach to things has always been the case. Like, in the same way as I have iOS and Android in my life today, I mean, I should say Mac OS and Android, I like to diversify. So I played with Commodore 64 early on, TI 99 4A, Texas Instruments, PET, Commodore PET, VIC, VIC 20, TRS 80, Apple II a little bit, but mostly Sinclair, and BASIC. I learned BASIC. And before I started, I actually had programmable calculators. So in the late 70s, I actually started with Texas Instruments, these calculators that you could program in assembly. And that's how I learned to program. And then I went from that to BASIC. And then, because I couldn't really afford a real computer, for a while I used one of those calculators that had BASIC, like one of those Casio, that has a very basic version of BASIC.
A basic.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun because I made games. I learned. Basically, imagine having the equivalent to having a smartphone in your pocket. You can pull it out anytime and code, right? Like,
for sure.
I was bored at my grandma's. Instead of watching
amazing.
TV, I'd be programming in BASIC. And
I had to fire up my Commodore 64 to program in BASIC.
That's right.
But having it in my pocket, that's the future, man.
Totally. So I've always been kind of into that, and so that's how I was lucky to be there early on, because I had access, and because my family was better off than some other people, right? Like, I want to acknowledge that, because I think that a lot of people in the startup in the Silicon Valley today are all about, like, self-made, bootstrap. Come on, you all come from middle class, you all come from money, you all come from privilege. Like, but I want to say
you
that
had a computer from the earliest
exactly.
moment.
So I'm very lucky,
remember.
and lucky opportunities to go on an exchange program to Canada, eventually become a Canadian. Now I'm married an American, so I have 3 passports. It's complicated, but my point is, all this is opportunity, all this is a privilege, right? And so I want to acknowledge that, and I want to say that, don't be afraid to change your career. Like, if you have the comfort level, right? Like, look, I don't have kids. Like, again, privilege, right? Like, I can decide right now in my older time of my career that, with experience, with a savings account, with all, I can say, like, I can try something else for a year. Or for the last decade, I've been freelancing, essentially. I run my own business. Like, I have ups and downs. Some months I don't make much money, some months I do. That is all the ability. Like, some people have to work 9 to 5 because they have to feed their families. I want to acknowledge that. So if you're in a position like I am, where you have a little bit more freedom and a little more flexibility, don't pigeonhole yourself in one thing.
Good advice. Myriam, this has been such a pleasure to get the chance to know you from this perspective and not just smartphones, which is, I think, what most of our interactions online have been
on the
about.
game stuff because I felt
No,
like
but I love that.
This is the part that nobody knows, right? Yeah.
That's the part that nobody knows, exactly. And that's the foundation that really kind of, that says so much about where your career has headed. I mean, maybe you're not working in video games right now, but certainly your focus on that technology, the relationships that you build, it's gotten you very far in your career, and that is obvious. And
can we finish on an anecdote? Do you want to find
Sure.
an anecdote? Okay,
Yeah,
I got one for you. Okay,
go for it.
So when I was working at Shaba in San Francisco, my first job there, which was the game where I did the PSP Tony Hawk game, one of the games we were doing, I think it was the Shrek game, it was GameCube. I think it was still GameCube. GameCube, we submitted our Gold Master, which is, in case of you don't know, nowadays everything is downloaded from the internet. But back then, it was a disc, and you had to submit the disc to Nintendo for them to test it. And then if they said yes, they would print it, and that your game was out, right? But you know, you had only so much time from a Gold Master to launch day, right? So like a week or something, or 5 days or something. So we submit our Gold Master, and we're all feeling very confident. Like we've tested the crap out of this game. QA has gone in and out 5 million times. Activision tested it too. We're good to go. And so I come to the office one day at noon. Like the game developers all show up at noon, and we work till midnight. Nintendo rejected our Gold Master because they said that the startup screen stays for more than 5 seconds on the screen. So one of the rules they had was that, you know, the splash screen that pops up when you first put the disc in the console and you hit power can only be up for 4 seconds or less than 5, whatever it was. And I'm like we're all looking at each other going, who wants that? Who's got that? And I'm like, I'll take it because I think this is a file I/O problem. It's probably taking too much time to read off the disc. So let's see. And so I spent so much time, my colleagues spend so much, I spent the whole day on it, like totally scratching my head, couldn't figure anything out. I wrote the file I/O, so I should know. And I'm like, you know, and it's an abstraction layer. Remember, the game developers are not calling fopen, which is the seek call for opening a file, and fseek to seek, and fread to read. They're calling my API that does all that abstraction for them, right? They're not supposed to talk directly to the GameCube. So I'm not even thinking that that's the problem. And I'm looking everywhere, and everything works, and I'm just like, what the F? So I'm like, I have a solution. Pick up the GameCube, put our Gold Master in it, put it on my ear, listen to the drive, always listen to the drive. And I hear it, spins up, and it reads the splash screen. And then as soon as he finishes putting up splash screen, I hear this, and I'm like, what the, why are you seeking? Why are you reading the disc? You're supposed to just freeze at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, something that is out of my control is accessing the disk, which is taking the image longer to load because it's reading something, coming back to read part of the image, coming back to read part of the image. So it's taking longer to display the image. So I found that some guy in our team, which will remain unnamed, you remember who you are, put a direct call to reading the disk for testing purposes, and that was never commented out.
Okay.
Once I figured that out, I removed that code, and we took less than 5 seconds before the first image showed up on this. It wasn't the duration of the splash screen; it was how long it takes before the splash screen appears. Because then it fixed, and we shipped the game, and it was approved. So there you go. Always listen to the drive, because you know.
I was going to say. Yeah, but that's the benefit that doesn't come in handy now because we don't really have physical media anymore.
But back then it was the thing. And then, so if you're in retro computing, listen to your hardware, okay? Like your hard drives. Like
I love the sound of a hard drive.
You can tell when they're failing. It's like,
yeah. Well, yes, you definitely can. That's a horrible sound. Yeah. But back in the day of the Commodore 64, and then we'll wrap this up, the 1541 drive and the beautiful sound of pulling data off those discs. I mean, I will forever remember that noise, and I love it. I love that noise. It's a great sound. Myriam Joire, you are awesome. I'm so
Thank you,
grateful to
Jason.
have you as my friend, and that we get to work with each other from time to time on the internet.
Goes vice versa.
Thank you for being here. If people want to follow the work that you're doing primarily, where do you want to send them? Of course, mobiletechpodcast.com
Yeah,
for your podcast.
mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the major platforms. If you look for Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank you can see my handle TNKGRL. That's my Instagram, Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, everything handle. So look for the podcast, subscribe to it. There's a Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL, which gives you a video version of the podcast in advance. That's exclusive to Patreons. There's other perks there as well. And then read up on my stories. Look for me on hothardware.com, geekspin.co, TechRadar. Let's see what else. Forbes Vetted. And I think those are the ones that I'm actively writing for right now. There's always a few that kind of just randomly come up. But yeah, read my stuff. Mostly focus on the podcast because to me, that's my kind of instrument of getting my thoughts out there. I review anything mobile. Sometimes we get into EVs as well. And sometimes we get into like wearables and audio, a lot of like, earbuds and stuff like that. Because obviously, and yeah, so check it out. I don't do video games though, because I've never really been a gamer. Like that's the thing. Like I love games. I support it. I admire the people who have the patience to like in the coordination to play the games. It's so great. But I'm more of like a in the back end playing with the code kind of person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Myriam, it's a pleasure, and I look forward to next opportunity to get the chance to talk tech with you. Thank you for coming on Techsploder
Thanks so
today.
much, Jason, for the opportunity to chat with the audience.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you, Myriam. Everybody should know that we have Patreon for this show as well, patreon.com/Jason Howell. If you go there, you can contribute, and you'll get perks here as well. Ad-free shows, early access to the videos that I do on the Techsploder YouTube channel, when appropriate, Discord community, an exclusive patrons-only pre-premiere, so much alliteration there, for every week's live stream of this show. And we also give the opportunity for people who want to give just a little bit more to be executive producers of the show, like this week's executive producers, the amazing Katie Lake, John Cuny, Bill Rudder, Jeffrey Maricini. Y'all are awesome. Everyone who supports this show and the Techsploder kind of experiment on Patreon, you all are great. So thank you so much for doing that. We do this podcast now on Thursdays, and actually 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern is the live time. If you want to check it out live, just go to the Techsploder YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Techsploder, subscribe, and you'll get notified when we do this live. And of course, if you can't catch the live show, just subscribe to the podcast and you'll get it each and every week. Everything you need is at techsploder.com. Thanks again to Myriam Joire. Thanks to you for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Techsploder podcast. Bye, everybody. And scene. Hold on. Let me bring it back. Hold on. Can't hear you. There we go.
Okay.
Yay.
Yeah. So am I still like, I went to Instagram and I have no idea where you find that stuff. Like, where is it?
So on your avatar, when I went to your Instagram, so here, I'll show you. When I went to your Instagram, I saw that your avatar had a little live thing on it. So see up here?
I see that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you click it,
Yeah.
it takes you
Okay. I
through,
click on it. I got it.
and there you
All
go.
right. That's really cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to go live on my.
Well, yeah. Thanks for doing that. That's awesome.
Hey,
I don't
come
know how
on.
many
I'm
people
always
joined.
game.
Yeah, totally. Learn
back
something
in the
new.
day when I was doing the Engadget Mobile podcast, it was audio only, but we streamed live. Well, I can't remember what we used. It was so complicated. It involved 3 computers, and you remember those days. It was brutal.
I do. At CNET, that was the way. We had a specific web page that a fan
Ustream.
created.
I want to
called,
say it was called Ustream.
Yes, it was Ustream. We had a page called watchbol.com that a fan created. They took the 4 individual streams that we would stream from and put it on a single web page. You had to know to play all of them and then mute 3 of them. That was the only way you could do it. Otherwise, you
Exactly.
get like, you know what I mean? Like we'd have the board mix going through one of them, and then everybody else's audio in the other ones. And if you didn't mute them, you'd hear everything like echoed like crazy. So
Yeah, I just remember
yeah.
that I had one computer to record myself. My guest was remote, wasn't had a computer record themselves. We would both be on Skype, and then there was a third person, which was the UStream computer on Skype, that was grabbing our stream and
Yeah.
relaunching it to some God knows where. It was something.
So complicated. We've come so far.
I know. Well,
Thank
it's
you,
cool.
Myriam.
StreamYards looks pretty cool. I should check it out.
Yeah, it's more like a live production kind of thing. You know what
Yeah,
I
it's
mean?
more like
It really
Twit.
is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that TriCaster thing.
Yeah.
Don't disconnect yet because I need to end the stream in order to finish your upload.
Yeah,
I want to
no
say
problem
goodbye to
at all.
everybody watching.
Bye,
Thank you so
everybody.
much for joining
Bye,
us for the
everybody
live
watching.
stream. This was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next time. I got to end the stream. Bye, everybody. Okay, and then.